pen tool. If you look to the left where your toolbox is, where did I leave that? Let's get a brand new pen here. There are several variations of it, but it looks like a little pen nib. Like so. That's your pen tool. Now, there's variations. There's others where you can actually, with a plus sign. There's one with a minus sign. So plus, minus. What else do we have in here? And we have, it doesn't look like a pen tool, but it looks like a little caret symbol, like so. Okay, so each of these for the pen tool, or for the anchor points that you use to create shapes, do a slightly different thing. So how the pen tool works, we'll start with making just a straight line. That's the easiest one. And to make a straight line, think of geometry. It takes 2 points in space to make a line, doesn't it? And the shortest distance between those 2 points is a line. So if you think of, here's point A, and over here is going to be point B, and it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't have to be horizontal, it doesn't have to be vertical or anything. You just click, select the pen tool, and click once, and you see a little square, and that is called an anchor point. You move anywhere else in space, in that two-dimensional space, and click again, and lo and behold, you have a second anchor point, and what it does is it makes a perfectly straight line between those 2 points. That's all there is to making a straight line. If you want to continue the line and have it go in different directions, then you continue to move the mouse and click. So if I wanted this to look like a vector, or make an angle here, I just move the mouse again and I click, and it makes a little anchor point, and then it continues from this point. If I want to make a triangle or any polygonal shape, I go back to the point where it originated, my first point where I started. And when you move over that point, not only will you see the little nib, or if you're using the crosshairs, I prefer the crosshairs a little bit. You'll see a little circle in the lower right-hand corner, or a little round dot, like so. And what that indicates is that you've moved over your starting point, and when you click on that, what it does is it joins this, and it joins everything together into a solid shape. So you can leave it as an open path, or you can create closed shapes this way. And this is a simple polygon. What you have to remember to do, though, when you're using this, if you wanted to create multiple lines, that when you click here, and then you move over to here and you click, and you're done with that path, if you're happy with that, you have to either click off the tool and click on the black arrow tool, which is kind of like home. That deselects this path. Then you can come back and you can create another one if you want. And you keep doing that. Another way to do that is to hold down the command key. So if I have the pen tool and I click, and I hold down the command key, and then I click the mouse, it finishes that path. That's a quicker way to move than go up to this point, click on it, deselect it, and then move to another one. It's much quicker to move from one point to another. Everybody got that? Command, click the mouse, and it deselects that path. If you do not deselect this path, it does what I just did here. It thinks you want to connect and then keep going with it. It's only when you go all the way around a shape and you end up where you started and it creates a closed path that it knows to stop. Okay, that's for straight lines, for polygons, for no curve paths yet. Now we want to start to create a nice curved line instead of a straight line. And we can go back and forth as you get more sophisticated between straight lines and curved lines and on and off. If I wanted to create kind of a sine wave, you know, I have a little ripple shape like this. You use the same tool. You use the pen tool. And the easiest way to think of where you need to place anchor points, or these little squares where you need to click the mouse, is every time the path changes direction. And typically you will see ahead, you'll have a drawing which will serve as a template. You'll be using a photograph, you'll use something, and you'll know, okay, the road ahead is straight, the road ahead curves, the road ahead stops, whatever. So if you think of them when you look ahead and you see a change in direction, if you think of driving on the road and you see the little amber signs that say, you know, that there's a stop ahead, or there's a T ahead, or there's a curved road ahead, or a tight pin curve, you know, what is it called, hairpin curve, or something like that. Imagine that you're seeing those signs. So to create this shape or this path, to do that, I have to do the following. I click and I don't move to the next point, because what I want to do is I want to pull out what are called tangent handles. Now, they might call them something different. They used to be called tangent handles. Different people call them different things. But what they enable you to do is to control the curve of the path. If you just click, it remains what I call a corner point, and it remains a straight line. But if I want this path here to curve, I need to pull out what are called tangent handles. So I click, and before I release the mouse, I pull up. And what it does is it pulls out these little tangent handles. Okay? Then what I do is I move to the next point, and you can see it's right here, right here, right here, and right here that the path begins to change direction. It curves, 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 and then it's at this point where it begins to stop and curve in the other direction. How are you going to know where to put these? Early on, you're going to have to guess. And try to keep in mind what I have said, but it will be a lot of guesswork until you feel comfortable with it. But that's the best place to think of, is that when it absolutely changes direction, or when the arc is so big that going from here to here with just 2 points isn't enough, and maybe you'll need to put another anchor point up here to help you continue along the curve. So anyway, I know that I can go from here to here, and now when I click, what happens is this starts to bow just a little bit, and then it tapers off and is really flat on this end, because these tangent handles are pulling this part of the path out from here to here, and it's making it arced. In order to complete the path so that it follows that curve, before I let go, okay, I come over here and I click and I drag, and when I drag, it pulls out the other part of this. Now, what this part of the tangent handle does is it controls this part of the path. This part of the tangent handle holds this part of the path. This one doesn't control anything because unless I added some more over here. This part of the tangent handle down here controls what potentially I will have down here. See, this is going to curve down. So this is pushed in that direction, so that means it's going to pull the path in that direction. Whatever direction these tangent handles go, or the direction that the curve wants to go. So now when I click over here, this wants to pull down, and then I click, and after I click, I drag and I pull out the tangent handles again, and this wants to curve back up. And then I go to the next point and I pull the tangent handles out by clicking and dragging, and it does the same thing. Okay? So fundamentally, that's what it does. So that's straight lines, curved lines, but then we want to go back and forth between straight lines and curved lines. How do you do that? And there are easy ways and there are difficult ways of doing it. And I want to try to show you the easy way, but it does require using key commands while you're doing it. And that's what makes it difficult. And again, it's like some features in some programs, it's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. You're doing a couple of things at once. And when you become familiar enough with the program, and you don't have to think about the key commands, and you just click on different points and drag, it will become second nature. And that's where I want you to be with this. Is that I want you to get to the point when you start to use the pen tool that you're not frightened of it, you don't shy away from it, that it feels comfortable to you, and you feel like you can do anything with it, because it is a very powerful tool. And for the longest time, it was really at the heart of Illustrator. It was what Illustrator was all about. But now it's not the case. In CS4 they added the blob tool, so now you can paint, make it like a bitmap. In CS3 they had added the eraser tool, so you can erase like it's a paint. They also added, and I can't remember, maybe it was CS2, don't remember which version, but they improved the auto trace feature, so you can bring in a photograph, you can bring in an illustration, you can bring in any kind of graphic, bitmap graphic, and it automatically traces it for you and does a really good job, not a crummy job the way their program used to do it. And then once it automatically traces it, then you can go back in and tweak these anchor points and make it just so, remove some, add some. And again, that's what these other tools do. If I want to remove this point, you use this tool, click on it, and it removes it, and then it makes that a straight line. If you want to add a point, if you discover later on, you know, I really needed a point in between here, and I didn't put one, or put one here, you click on the one with a plus sign, and you just click there, and it adds a point there, and then you can manipulate it. What this will do is that if you have an anchor point with no tangent handles, and you click and you drag, it will pull the tangent handles out, and it will curve it. If you have a curved path with tangent handles, and you use this and you click on it, they will disappear, and it will turn back into a corner point. So this converts the path, the anchor points on the path. What it will also do is if you have a tangent handle, and you'll notice that by default, this part of the tangent handle and this one are connected to one another. They function like a teeter-totter. When you push over on this one wants to go in this direction, and it wants to change this part of the path. And when you move in the other direction, it does the opposite. Push on one, pulls on the other, and vice versa. If you want these to be separate from one another, to work independently of one another, then you click on this tool and click on either one of these and click and drag, and then you'll see that they work independent of one another. Okay. So a lot to learn with this, but when you do use it and use it effectively, it can be a very powerful tool. Okie doke. So what I'm going to do is just turn off the video, resize everything, and we'll work on this exercise. And if you want to follow along with me, you can. Okay, so in CS3 and in prior versions, they had you draw a pair. That would be the final outcome of this thing. Now they've changed it to an apple. I'm not sure why, but just to make things different. So this is the end product. This is what you're starting with, and they give you a template, which means they give you a drawing. Excuse me. Hope I'm not getting something. Which looks like the connect the dot things. You know when you go to Denny's? Anybody go to Denny's or family restaurants? There you go. And they say, do you have kids? And they give them a box of crayons, and they give them a little placemat, and on one side it has the connect the dots. That's what this is. And what they're doing is, if you look carefully, they're showing you where you should put the anchor points, how far you should pull out the tangent handles, and how you can or connect or disconnect those tangent handles to make it follow the path the way you want it. So we will get to that in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and move that aside. hide this one. And now they have these other exercises, which are pretty much what I had just talked about. Not in their entirety, but similar. This is part 1. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to use the pen tool. If you want to tear off all of the tools, just use the tear off and keep it to your side. Now, they have us, if you want, you can click down here and do it, or you can, as is customarily done, use the drawing underneath as a template to trace. Now, notice the little icon with the pen nib and the crosshairs. I don't like looking at the icon. So if I hit the caps lock key, notice how it changes to just the cross or I find that to be more accurate, and when you turn off caps lock, it turns back to this cursor. If you like using the icons, fine. If you would rather use just little crosshairs, then I like that. I prefer that. I like that better. So as I said, I want to go ahead and make this a little zigzaggy shape. Straightforward, the easiest part. Make sure the pen tool is selected, and we'll notice at the top along here, by default it has a white fill. I really don't want any fill from the start, so I'm going to turn that off. I could have done that down here so that there's no fill, it's just the path. Remember, when you're done, you can always go back later and add a fill or change it. But if I'm just making a line and I don't want any, a stroke, and I don't want a fill, then you might want to turn it off now. By default, it gives you a 1-point stroke width, and there's no style associated. Brush is just simply a particular size that we have at the moment, and the opacity is 100%. So now I'll start at the top. You could start at the bottom. It really doesn't matter. But you do have to follow the path in a systematic fashion. I click, and I move the mouse to the next point, and I click, and notice it connected those 2 dots, those 2 points in space. Move to the next point again, and click the mouse, and notice how it's following the path. Just simple straight lines. Just click, move the mouse, click, move the mouse. And every time I click, notice it leaves an anchor point, and it is solid, so that means it's highlighted. The other anchor points are left here, and because they're no longer active, they are hollow. But they will always remain there unless you edit them or remove them, and they can always be moved or edited in another fashion. Now remember, I said, what if I wanted to make my own down here? If I don't turn this path off, it will continue to keep making it the path from before. Say, okay, I'm done with that one. Now I'm going to make my own down here. So I click here, here, here. Notice it started connecting them. It didn't know to finish. So to finish this, hold down the Command key and click, and it ends that path. Command key is the Apple key, and you have one on either side of the keyboard. Now I can start again, and I can click, move the mouse, click, and I can make my zigzag. And when I'm done with it, hold down the Command key and click. Whoops, come on, wrong key. Command key and click, and it ends it for me. So that's the simplest way to use the pen tool. Just simple zigzag lines. Now I'm going to make one that's a little bit more complicated. We're still making straight lines, but notice that these are perfectly horizontal, vertical, or at a 45-degree angle. Can anybody guess what key we would hold down to do that? When you constrain proportions, what key do you hold down? Same. If you want to constrain the movement, you hold down the shift as well. So I go ahead and I'll click on the first point, hold down the shift key, and look at, I'm not even close to the next one, but when I click, notice it makes it perfectly horizontal. Similarly, if I move over to the side a little bit, and I continue to hold down the shift key, and I click, notice it makes it perfectly vertical. So, you know, you try to get close, and it makes nice, perfect horizontal or vertical lines. And then when I move diagonally, it does the same. It will go to the 45-degree angle, and then when I click again, if you're in the range, it will make it perfectly vertical, horizontal, or at a 45-degree angle. That works really nice. So we're still just making straight lines. And when you're done, hold down the Command key, click, and it finishes the stroke. So I'll close that one. And now we're ready to step it up a notch and do something a little bit more complicated. What we're going to do, as I did, make the little sine wave, the little curve paths. So this is what you do. You move over the end, and we click and we drag, and notice that I am pulling out those tangent handles that I talked about. You don't see a path yet, you just see the anchor point and you see the tangent handles. Now watch when I click on the point B, see how it starts to curve like I talked about, but it's not curving at that end. But as soon as I drag, and then I keep pulling and moving the mouse until it matches the underlying path, and then I release, I've made a curved path. Hold down the Command key, click to end it, and now we're going to repeat those steps to make the little scallop shape. So once again, I'll click and drag, and I'll pull it about the height of the arc that I want to make. Then I move to the next point, and I click and I drag, and watch. If I pull up on it, notice that the path wants to go in the opposite direction. Don't let go of the mouse, just pull the mouse in the opposite direction until it goes whichever way you want it to go. Get it to match the arc underneath. And don't worry if it's not perfect, because you can always go back and edit it. I'll release the mouse, go to the next point, and I'll click and I'll drag until it matches the arc underneath. And then I move to the next point and I click and I drag to pull it up until it matches. And notice it's not matching quite perfectly, but that's okay. Click and I drag until it matches. Click and drag until it matches. And then what I need to do now, because I need to go back and tweak this. You don't keep you don't keep hitting undo, and you don't keep hitting reset until it fits perfectly. As long as it's going in the right direction, you can always go back and edit the anchor points or the tangent handles. To do so, you select the white arrow, which is the direct selection tool. The white arrow allows you to click on any of these points and move them wherever you want. They can always be edited. I can zoom in for a moment here to get a nice tighter view of this, and I can see, oh boy, I have some work to do. The anchor points are where they should be. It's the tangent handles that need to be pulled up or pushed down to fit the curve a little better. So I just, with the white arrow selected, or the direct selection tool, I click and I drag until it fits. Click the next point so that both tangent handles are selected, and I click and I pull it up a little bit until it fits. Doing pretty good. Click on the next one. Click and drag until that one fits. Click on the next one, push it in a little bit, move it a little bit until it fits. And again, notice that when you click these, and watch, when I pull on this, notice how it pulls just on that part. And when I move it left or right, see the teeter-totter kind of effect I was talking about? When I push on this way, the other part wants to move in the other direction. Move the anchor point over a little bit, get it to match the way I want it, and it looks pretty good overall. You can also nudge anchor points by selecting them and using your arrow tools, the ones on your keyboard. So you can nudge it a point to the left, a point to the right. See how I can move my arrow tools to move it up, down, over. Okay, so that's a simple curves. Now we're going to step it up one more time. We're going to do a little bit different. We're going to create, this is a true scallop shape. Notice that it doesn't curve and then come down and curve again. It comes to a point, curves, comes to a point, curves, comes to a point. We do this a little bit differently now. And this is important to watch rather than try to follow along unless you know how to use the tool. Because now we need to be using key commands in order to change the function of the tool on the fly. I'll start with the pen tool. And let's zoom in a little bit so I can see this a little bit better. So I start the way I did before. I click and I drag, pulls out the tangent handle just like I thought it would, and I click and I drag until it matches. And I'm in good shape. But now before I go to the next point, because this does not curve in the opposite direction, remember I said this tangent handle tells me the direction the next part of the path is going to move. It's pulled down, so if I click over here, it wants to go down. It's not going in the right direction. It's not pulling up. So this is what you do. You hold down the Option or Alt key, and you click on the tangent handle and drag it up into the direction you want it to go. Release the mouse, and then click on the next point, and now you can see it's going in the right direction. Hold down the Option key again, click and drag to pull it in the direction you want the path, the next part of the path to go, and then you click and you drag until it matches. And you repeat that for the remainder of the scallop. Hold down the Option key. Notice when I hold down the Option key, it changes to that Convert Path tool, the little caret symbol. Click and drag, pull it. Now I click and drag till it matches. Hold down the Option or Alt key, click and drag to move it up, click and drag until it matches. Okay, so now we have something different. Now we're going from curved paths to straight lines, and from straight lines back to curved paths. And this is typical of what you're going to do, especially when you start tracing photographs. It's not just one simple, continuous, simple curves or shapes that we've made so far. You're constantly going back and forth from straight line to curved lines to straight line, and it's more the more compound paths. So I start off the same as I did before. I click and I drag, and I move over to the next point, and I click and I drag until it matches. But now, even if I move to the next point and I click, notice it wants to pull or bend that because of the tangent handle. I don't want that. So what I do is I hold down the Option key, and now I click on the anchor point. And by clicking on the anchor point, it removes that half of the tangent handle. I don't need a tangent handle there. Now I can click here, and if I want it to be perfectly horizontal, I hold down the Shift key. And now look what I want to do. Now I'm ready to curve again, so how do I get it to curve? Hold down the Option key, click on the anchor point, and I click and I drag to pull out the tangent handle. Move to the next point, click and drag until it matches, and I repeat the same step. I need to get rid of this part of the tangent handle. Hold down the Option key, click on the anchor point, and it removes it. Hold down the Shift key to click to the next point so that it's perfectly horizontal. And now it's turning back to a curve again. To pull that tangent handle out that I need, I hold down the Option or Alt key, click on the tangent handle and drag and pull. Move to the last point, click and drag until it matches the path. This is the most complex kind of path you will make. It's pretty typical. And it's feeling comfortable going back and forth that way. And if it doesn't perfectly match, don't worry about it, because as I said, when you're done with it, go back to the Direct Selection tool, and we can always move anchor points. We can always move tangent handles and make it, change it to fit whatever you want it to be. We can click here to add points. We can click here to remove points. As I said, if you change this, if I click on here, watch what happens. This is a curve point. As soon as I click here, notice it removed that part of the tangent handle. So now it wants to make this straight again. Similarly, if I click on click on here where it's straight, and I drag. Notice it pulls that out. Now this has to be straight, so I hold down the Option key, and I click on here. Didn't want to do it that way. I goofed. Hold on. Let's go back to here. No, oh, Kirk, come on. Select here. Okay. I'll just push it back in. That's not really what I wanted to do, but that's what I did. Okay. So now we're left at the very end with the pair exercise. And it's broken down into various parts. So let me zoom out so we can see this. They've already given you parts of the stem, they've given you parts of the leaf, and we have an arrow to make, and then the last part is to draw and to follow the pattern of the pear. Let me start with the arrow, move up to the stem, create the leaf, and remember you'll need to resize these to fit the proportions of the pear. So you use some of what we learned in the last exercise using the tools that allow us to modify strokes and shapes, increase the scale, reduce, whatever. Okay, so let's zoom in over here and let's make the arrow. This is just to show you some of the additional features that they have in here. Rather than draw the arrow tip and the arrow feathers separately, they have features that will automatically add them for you. They've got lots of little things, you know, like the old-fashioned guy pointing in one direction, and different kinds of arrow tips and arrow feathers and stuff. Why would you need this? It's more than, you know, you're not going to be illustrating cowboys and Indians. It's more that you're probably going to do, you know, maybe mechanical drawings. It could be a floor plan. It could be maybe you're a carpenter and you're designing a cabinet, and you want to draw really tight, precise drawings that indicate the length and the width and the depth. And you would use these tools to do that. So to make my arrow, I click from point A to point B. Whoops, how did that happen? Let me do this again. Hold down the Shift key. Oh, I know why. Never mind. I don't need the Shift key. If I do that, it constrains it to a 45-degree angle. I want to make sure that this is 3 points. How do I know that? Because I know from experience. If I recall, the book doesn't tell you. And there's a reason why I do that. That when I add the arrowhead and the feathers, they will be scaled correctly. I've just learned that from doing this exercise for several years now. Now what I need to do to be able to separate this, because when we separate the parts of this and put one part here and one part up here, they need to be halved. Well, we have two tools that do that, and they're down here underneath the hand tool. No, they aren't. Underneath the eraser tool. We have the scissors and the knife tool. The scissors is the one that I want. I move over in between those 2 points and click. Notice it just added a point. If I take my move tool, you'll see that it has broken this into 2 paths. So that's what this does. What does the other tool do? I'll show you. The knife tool allows you to take a shape, and it doesn't matter what shape it is. And what we can do with the knife tool is we can draw a nice squiggly line through here. And notice how it cuts it in half. That's what that one does. So we're allowed to come back and to edit and to cut and to do a variety of things with this. So now I have the 2 halves, and now I'm ready to add the tip and the feathers. What you have to remember is that wherever you start a path is the beginning, and wherever you end the path is the end. Sounds simple, but you have to remember where you start and where you end. Well, what happens now that I've moved it? This is still the start, and this is still the end. because I started down here. Okay? Likewise, this one, this is still the start, this is still the end. So now to add this arrowhead, I go to Filter, and I select Stylize, and I add arrowheads. They have a feature for arrowheads. There we go. And when you scroll through here, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of different types. Look at all these different types, all the different styles. Now we get into the feathers. I believe it was 2 of 27, looks pretty close. Scale 100%. I'm going to leave it 100% because I know that it will be scaled to the stroke that I've used, which is a 3-point rule. And again, that's just by experience. Now, notice also that I put it at the end. Why did I put it at the end? Because I said this is the start, this is the end. I click OK. If I put it at the start, it would have put it down here. Click OK, and it adds it. Now we select the other path, and I go back up to Filter, select Add Arrowheads, and this time I'm going to go backwards. Make sure that there's none at the start, but or at the end, but I do want something at the beginning. See how they have all the other little things, the famous fingers, the little square tips at the end? And this is the one that we want. I think it's 18. Yep, 18 to 27. Click OK. Voila, I've added it. Now I can come back and I can move these. And it's added that pretty nicely. Something else that they added in the last version is a group. This becomes a group. And when I double click on it, watch what happens to groups. This is similar to something that you would see in Flash. When I double click on this, notice that this changes up here. We're currently in an isolated group, and now when I select this part, notice that this is separate from this. So if I wanted to make this bigger, if I want to change its properties, if I want to make this smaller, do whatever, they are independent of one another. And then when I go back and click on the back arrow, it treats this as a group, as two elements that are united together. So anytime you use a group, and they've actually added this and improved upon it in CS4. It's a really nice feature which makes it very easy to edit some of your group shapes from here on out. And you can have groups within groups within groups, which works pretty nice. Nested groups. So the next thing that we're going to draw is the stem. Now notice they've already drawn it for you. Another thing that you should think about when you're creating your shapes using the pen tool is to try to use as few anchor points as you as few anchor points as are absolutely necessary. And you can see that we have a completely enclosed shape with only 2 anchor points. We didn't need any more than that. But you can see here that each of the anchor points is incorrect. That I have a rounded anchor point or a curved anchor point where I need a corner one, and I have one here where there's a corner one where I need the tangent handles. So what they're trying to teach us here is to use the Convert Direction tool, click on here, whoops, I got to make sure that I'm exactly on that point, and move it over, and now I've delinked them, if you want to call it that, and move it over. Now I can click on this one, and click and drag, and notice how it pulls out the tangent handles. Pull it until it fits, and I have my stem. That's all I want to show you here. But it does a couple of things. They don't talk about it, but we can create, as I said, a completely enclosed shape by only using 2 anchor points, and that's it. And you will find that the fewer anchor points you use to create your shapes, the more accurate and the cleaner your path will look. If you use too many anchor points, you tend to get what are called these little artifacts. When you print it out, you see these little blips that stick out. Yeah, and you want to get rid of those. So if you do have that, come back and try to minimize it. And I will point that out when you're doing the beach scene. say you have these little glitches here. Try to get rid of these little things. When you're trying to do something loose and you're trying to do something that looks more spontaneous, that looks like it's hand-drawn, that's a different animal. But when you're trying to do something really precise, you don't want to see those little glitches.
Do they always show an outline? They do, right?
They will, but oftentimes you have to actually print it first to get a sense of what's going on. That you don't see it on the screen always. But when you print it, you can see the smallest little glitch. So, pen tool again. Now, we're creating just a little smooth arc, and then it's going to go to the next step, and we're going to create the leaf. This teaches you another part of this. See, we're creating the bottom part. So we use the pen tool, click and drag, continue to move over, click and drag until it matches the underside, click and drag until it matches. Don't follow their guidelines that precisely. Hold down the command key and click, and I'm finished. And I go, oh, look what I did. I messed up. I meant to close the path. So what they're doing here in this last step is they're trying to show us that once you have a completed path, how do you add on to it? Once you have made a path that's open and you want to go back in and you want to continue and edit it, add to it, delete from it, how do you do that? To add to this, you select the pen tool and you move over one of the two anchor points. If you don't see where they are, hit Command Y, and that will turn this to outline. And even if you don't know where they are, here, hold on. Another way to do that would be to go to View and to say, Show, oh, come on, Smart Guides. When you move over any part of this, it will tell you where an anchor point is in blue. And when you do, let me turn that off for a minute so you can see something. When I move over the end, notice that the plus sign now has a little hash mark beneath it. That means that we've moved over an anchor point, and when I click and I drag, I'm pulling out a tangent handle that I'm actually adding to the path, and I'm building on it. If I don't do that, watch what happens. If I just click close to it, and I click, now you can obviously see that it's not matching, but what if it looked like it was? And I come over here, and I click and I drag like so. And I go, okay, I need to change that. And you come back with this tool, and we click on here, and I pull on here, and it looks pretty close. And I move this into place. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Use the direct selection tool, and we move this point over, and move the tangent handle down. I go, okay, now I'm ready to fill it. Watch what happens when I try to fill it. It goes from point A to point B. It doesn't follow the path, does it? It's not a closed path. So this is what you have to do. Get rid of this part and start over. Start with your pen tool. Move over the edge, and when you see that hash mark, click and drag to pull out the tangent handle if that's what you need. Move over to the end, and remember I said when you're ready to create a closed path, you see the little circle that appears? That lets you know you're ready to create a closed path. Click, then drag, and pull it, and now I have a closed shape. Now when I fill it with a green, the whole thing fills. It's not two paths, it's one closed path. Excuse me. So now we're ready to do the last part of the exercise, which is the pair. Why they start over here, I don't know. If you were doing this on your own, it really wouldn't matter where you start, just as long as you go methodically, clockwise or counterclockwise around the shape. Okay? So what we do with the pen tool is similar. You'll see the little bite mark is like the scallop that we created. We click and drag from point A to point B to pull out the tangent handles. I click and drag B here and pull it out, and that matches pretty nicely. Guess I better get rid of the fill, huh? Now I know to the next point here, if I click on point C, if I click here, see how it wants to go in the opposite direction? That's not what I want. So I need to move over the tangent handle, hold down the Option key, and move it in the direction I want the path to go. Now I can click on point C and drag until it matches. And now I know, once again, when I go to point D, I want it to go in the other direction. So I hold down the Option key, I click and drag it in the direction I want it to go, and then I click and drag again until it matches. Once again, this is going to go in an abrupt change of direction. So I hold down the Option key, and I click on the tangent handle, and I move it in the direction I want the path to go. From here on out, we just need to click and drag because it's one nice, smooth, continuous curve. There's no abrupt changes in direction. So now I click the point E and I drag until it matches. I move to point F and I click and I drag until it matches. I click and drag on G. Notice if I pull too far, you can push it back in, move it left, move it right. Now in here, we need some extra anchor points. Here we need one because we're going around a big curve. We need another one over here for it to match. And then we come back to point A. We see the little circle that denotes that it's going to be a closed path, and I click and I followed it around. I have a nice clean version. If I want to go back and clean this up, I can by using the direct selection tool. Click on any anchor point, any tangent handle, and you can manipulate it. You can move it, you can push it, you can change it any way you like. And now that it's a closed path, we can come back up here to swatches. We can select, and yours should say pair body, and it fills it with the pair body. We can select the stroke, and we can make sure that there is no stroke. Notice that this doesn't quite match. We can come back, and I can click on the tangent handle to pull that out a little bit and get this to fit really nice. You can keep tweaking, moving anchor points, moving tangent handles until it fits. And then I can move the other points, the parts into place. Notice that I want to select the stem. Let's fill it with the stem color, which I believe is, there's the pear stem. I don't want a stroke, so I'll select the stroke, select none, and I'm going to use my move tool, and I'm going to move it in place, and this is way too big. So how do I quickly reduce it in size? A couple of things. If I want it to reduce from here in the lower left-hand corner or from the bottom center, I can make it do that. I can also, I'll click from the center here, but instead I'm going to select the scale tool, which is here. And remember, by default, the point that it scales is from the center, but I want to center it from down here. Now I move out as point B is the second part. Hold down the Shift key to constrain the proportions. And I have my stem. I've moved it down and I've scaled it, so now it's the right size. Do the same with the leaf. Move it in place. It's way too big. Don't need the stroke, so I'll remove it. We need to scale it. Use the scale tool. Click about the point that I want it to scale, so click on there. Then I hold down the Shift key and click outside and move it down until it scales, so it's a nice size here. Now look at it, it's beneath the pear. How do you bring it forward? There's a couple of ways. The easiest way is to go to Object, Arrange, and select Bring to Front, and that brings it to the front of everything. And there. Now what I want you to also do is to use the pen tool, use the brush tool, use whatever tools you want to go ahead and make the veins inside the leaf, make the little arcs that we need, and move the arrow over. So I have the little arrow parts here. Let's select those and move them over. Come on. Go ahead and object arrange, have this one bring to front. Move it over, whoops, selected the wrong one. Gotta make sure I select the right one. Move it over like so. Might be that this is too big, too small, who knows. Move the other one and we're set to go. When you're ready to, when you feel comfortable with this, and some of you said you've already used the pen tool. And if you go through this exercise really quickly, then you'll want to go to my website and you will download, it's not a PDF file, it is an Illustrator file of the first exercise, or assignment rather, which is the beach scene. Okay, so kmart66.com. I select Kirk's classes. I select handouts. I select Adobe Illustrator. And you'll see here is assignment 1, beach scene. I click on this button to download, and it's an older version of Illustrator. Actually, this was developed even before CS, but this is a CS version. So sometimes when you double click on it after it's downloaded, it won't open in Illustrator. So you might want to make sure that Illustrator is already open. Now I have to look on my cluttered desktop. And you'll see here's the icon of that CS file. Drag it on top of the Illustrator application, and it will launch it in Illustrator. Now this is what you have. This can be a vertical or horizontal piece. You're given each of these shapes: an umbrella, a shell, an ice cream truck, a palm tree, a sailboat, some waves, and some clouds. And what you will need to do first is to use the pen tool to trace around these shapes. And I will do some of them next Tuesday. Today's Thursday, right? To show you how to get started with them after if you're not feeling quite comfortable with the pen tool. And then what you do is you resize them, color them any way you want, put in additional elements for maybe a sky and a ground plane and maybe some water for the ocean or whatever you want to create the other elements. Maybe use a nice big ball for the sun, a big yellow ball, or yellow ball. And you put together a variety of shapes, and you can multiply them if you want. After you make one, remember you can hold down the shift key and drag and make duplicates and resize it, and before you know it, you could have a whole grove of palm trees based on one tree. You need to use each element at least once. And when I see each element used at least once, I do not want it distorted. If you use it additional times, you're free to distort it. But I want to make sure that you know how to scale without distorting objects. Okay? As I said, you can color it and play with the fills. You can play with pattern fills. You can play with gradients. Do whatever you want. They can remain shapes that are outlined, or you can remove the outlines. All kinds of possibilities. For as many years as I've used this exercise, and it's been around a long while, it's a good introductory assignment for the use of the pen tool. They always look different. Everybody does something different, even though you're using the same shapes. All this assignment does is for me, is it tests your skill in using the pen tool. From here on out, after this assignment, the creativity part will be far broader and will be much wider in possibilities, and you'll have, I think, a lot more fun with it. This one is more like a children's book type of illustration, something you'd see in a little, 2-year-old, 4-year-old kind of illustration. Okay. So there you have it. There's the pen tool. There's the next exercise, or the first assignment, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the video recorder, and if you want me to repeat anything, I will. If you want me to review anything, I will.